We're starting with MP Chambers for the first 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate welcome everybody back after a summer break. Ms. Wilson, thank you for being here today. Congratulations on your success as a business owner, and obviously you take a leadership role within the industry. I'm curious, after the change in your position, or maybe one of your peers in the industry, if they're thinking about maybe growing or merging or purchasing another consulting firm or taking on additional risk, do you think they're more or less likely to do that after these changes?
I can say with 100% confidence they're less likely to do that. We, leverage our own house. We don't pay ourselves. There's a substantial amount of risk in starting a new business. There's already enough deterrence. We don't need to give them any more.
Thank you. And you mentioned risk. When you're comparing someone who has T4 income, regular employment income, or regular paycheck, salary paycheck as an example, with someone who makes a gain on capital, it's not automatically guaranteed that that person who's looking for a gain on capital will actually realize a gain. Like, it's possible that they get zero, correct?
That's correct.
Right. And so there may be some years or a situation where you purchase an asset or you purchase a building, you purchase another firm, and it just doesn't really work out, and that asset is now no longer worth what you paid for it. In fact, it's actually worth zero. That's always a risk, correct?
That's correct. Or the risk is you won't win the next contract and next year is not as busy and you're still employing people and you still have the same amount of expenses with lower profit.
Right. And so in your mind, it makes sense that there's a bit of preference in the tax system to reward risk-taking, because it could actually go, like, if, as you say, if you don't get any contracts the next year, it actually goes, that business could be worth nothing.
That's correct.
Right. And you mentioned about trying to encourage new people to come into the business or young people to start businesses. Do you think, after these announcement or this change, do you think we'll have more people wanting to start small businesses or fewer?
We already struggle with people having enough capital to invest in the firm that they're working for as an owner. This only takes away from that opportunity for them.
Right. Do you think your experiences in your industry are kind of similar to other industries that you've come into contact with, construction firms, other trades? Do you think your experience could be likely similar across those industries?
So as the president of our local Home Builders Association, which has 110 members, I've met with lots of skilled trades, engineering firms, designers, contractors. They are all in the same boat. The level of risk that they have to take, there needs to be a reward at the end of the day for owning your own small business and investing back into your community. Right. We don't have a pension plan, right? So at the end of the day, the money I may make from selling the business, is what I'm going to say, right? The risk is on me, is my pension plan at the end of the day. Right? That's the difference.
Thank you very much. Ms. Yetman, you mentioned you represent 365,000 teachers. That's a lot of people. Would you consider those 365,000 people part of the 0.13% or the 0.1%? Like, are they really rich?
Well, 75% of teachers are actually women, so most of them have a partner. So there is possibilities that they might be part of that small little group. Yes, but very few.
But very few.
Yeah.
Okay. Would it surprise you to learn that in any given year, individuals who make less than $120,000 actually have a capital gain once in their lifetime over $250,000?
Oh, I've heard that. Yes, I
Right.
know that.
So would you support, since your members are likely not in the, most of them are not in the 0.13% that the government's going after, would you support carving out anyone who makes under $120,000, $100,000 from paying the increased capital gains tax?
No. If somebody is able to have more than 250,000 in capital gains, they're doing okay. So no, I disagree.
Okay. And so even if that's just a once in a lifetime event,
Well, good for them. Like right on for them. You know
okay.
that they get
so
that
so
once in a
so
lifetime
your
capital gain.
so your members that inherit family property or something, a once in a lifetime event, you think that they should pay more just once, and even though they're not the richest of the rich,
Right.
I'm just trying to understand where you're drawing the line.
Teachers understand the common good.
Okay.
I'm going to say that too.
Thank you.
Because they all work for the government. They
Thank
understand
you.
the common good.
Thank you, Ms. Mead.
MP Chambers. We are starting with MP Morantz, and I believe he's splitting time with MP Stewart. And welcome, MP Stewart, to our Finance Committee. And congratulations on your election. And now to MP Morantz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Wilson, I want to start with you. Your firm does work for companies that do construction projects, presumably, correct?
That's correct.
And in your earlier testimony, you said you felt that if the capital gains inclusion rate was increased, that would incentivize less risk, correct? People would be less likely to take the risk if the capital gains inclusion rate is included of a project to
That's
be
correct.
developed.
Yes, the higher the capital.
Did I understand you
gains-
correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what that means is, in all likelihood, there will be fewer projects, construction projects built across the country once this tax, the increase in the inclusion rate is passed into law.
That's correct. I mainly work with private development, which is reinvesting back into our housing market. So if there's
Yeah,
less capital
yeah.
for them to reinvest
Yeah.
back into that market, then
Yeah,
that means less
and-
housing.
And who builds those projects?
You know, my neighbor.
Like
Or
people-
big developers.
Yeah,
It
like-
depends on whether we're
It's
looking at.
not like the people on the ground though on the site project. Who are they? Are they? Some of them might be married to teachers. Some of them might be just construction guys, tradespeople that are making a living on the job. Is it fair to say that there will be fewer construction jobs across the country if the capital gains inclusion tax is increased? Do you think your firm will see less business because of that?
I believe that if the capital gains is increased, there'll be less money put back into projects that will support our communities, which means less jobs for the people in those communities.
Thank you. And one of the things I want to clear up, because there's been a lot of talk about this $250,000 threshold. The reality is the way the law is designed, if you're incorporated, and I presume most of your clients that come to you, they're incorporated, they don't get that $250,000 break in the inclusion rate at 50%. Are you aware of that? Yeah. And so with all the discussion around this table about people, benefiting, this great windfall of once in a lifetime, that they're getting the inclusion rate at 50%. That doesn't include at all the small business restaurant owner who's incorporated, that owns their business through a restaurant, just trying to make a living in the restaurant business. It doesn't include any small business entrepreneur that happens to be incorporated. There are millions of them across the country. Many of them are your customers, I presume. So it's just not accurate to say that that everybody who makes a capital gain of $250,000 or less is taxed at an inclusion rate of only 50%. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. The
yeah.
one point, if I can expand,
Sure.
our small businesses put a ton of money back into the community. So I certainly support the philanthropy point that's been raised here. But I also want to advocate for the small businesses. We are, sponsoring soccer teams, baseball teams. We donate robotic computers to the local schools.
Yeah.
You know, the money that we make goes back into that community.
Okay. I have to turn my time over. There's about just over a minute to my new colleague, Mr. Stewart, who wants to ask a question.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a financial background. I'm a CFA charter holder, but also an engineer, so I think in systems. And I just came off an election where I got to talk to people at their doors, not in a committee setting. And many people told me they're not 40,000, they're not all living in St. Paul's, but a lot of people told me about their venture investments. They'll be taking them offshore, where they'd be subject to lower taxes, where they wouldn't have to, they wouldn't be diluting their equity as much because here they got to compensate for the higher tax rate. So we're compensating people less. They're diluting themselves more. They're going to go to the U.S. But my question is, in a country here where we already have a progressive tax rate, which can be significant and heavy, are we not sacrificing our economy, our future economy, our GDP, and our jobs by knocking up the inclusion rate to 66%?
I believe we are damaging our economy and the money that will go back into it from small businesses. It hurts many people that I know in small communities. It will make it more challenging for someone to move their grandparents in and retrofit that unit, right? We need small businesses. We need to make it attractive for them.
This is what I heard.
Thank you, and thank you, MP Morantz, MP Howland.
Thanks, Chair. I wanted to direct my questions towards Ms. Wilson, and then I'd like to move a motion. Ms. Wilson, thank you. Thank you for standing up not only for small business, but explaining that it's small businesses that through their success, hard work, and the risks that they take for this country, they reinvest back into their communities and in most cases, the most vulnerable. You had articulated before about builders not having as many projects or not wanting to invest in more projects. It could also mean that a business may not want to scale up because of this job-killing capital gains tax hike. If I look further, that means you would have less projects to work on as well, correct? Now, when we look at the youth job unemployment rate right now, it's one of the worst that it's ever been. Would you agree that this also would impact that job unemployment or disincentivize from others even just getting into the trades?
Yeah, so I can speak a bit to my personal experience. We hired 20% of our total staff. We hired 20% this summer for co-op students. That is a rarity in the industry. We are taking the financial gains we have and investing them back into our youth because that's the only way we're going to bridge the current labor market that we have and that missing middle piece of the labor market. If we don't invest in the youth and grow them up, so to speak, we are not going to have them in our labor force. So it's important for us to be able to put that capital back into the business. And the more capital we have to do that, the better for our youth.
Right, and this job-killing capital gains tax hike would disincentivize companies from investing further in not just in themselves, but in Canada.
I do believe that's true.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you so much for your testimony.
And
Chair.
now we are back to our witnesses. And MP Howland, you have just under 4 minutes. Just under 3 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Get
you.
the time running, please, clerk. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Wilson, I want to come back to some of our discussions. I have an article here published in Canadian Consulting Engineer called Capital Gains Changes Disproportionately Impact Engineering Firms. You're familiar with this article because you're mentioned in it. I presume you're familiar with it. Right?
I've read it, yes.
I want to ask you, in this article, it says that the Association of Consulting Engineering Companies reached out to the federal government to ask for a meeting with Finance Minister Freeland and Revenue Minister Bibeau, and that ultimately you got a meeting with Revenue Minister Bibeau. Is that correct?
That's correct. Online meeting.
Were you given a reason why the Finance Minister wouldn't meet with you?
Not to the best of my knowledge. I'd have to ask the association folks if they were given a reason, but I don't know of one.
Because by and large, tax policy is designed within the Department of Finance, not within the Department of National Revenue. That's why I'm curious about it. The role of the Minister of National Revenue is to oversee the operations of CRA, essentially, but not to make tax policy. So the person you met with actually was likely not involved in the creation of this policy, which is too bad. It would have been, I think it would have been better if the finance minister had actually shown you some respect and showed up and actually talked to you directly about why she was basically increasing taxes on your industry and your clients. But you did meet with Minister Bibeau. Can you tell me about that meeting? What did you tell her?
We spoke to the impact of to the small businesses, much like I've spoke about today. She further explained the position on why it is supported from their perspective, and we let her know the challenges. Right, we aren't the 1% that it's affecting. We are not that 1%.
Yeah, and did you ask her, or did it come up whether or not they had any data on how many people this was actually going to be affecting, and whether or not it would result in? Actually, my question is, did it come up if they had any data on what the effect of this tax increase would have on our GDP? Did that topic come up?
It wasn't discussed, no.
That's
Now,
fine.
it's going to be MP Stewart for the first 5 minutes, right? Okay, great.
No?
Right now,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Yetman, I had a question for you. I've got a lot of teachers in my family, so thank you very much for your contribution to educating young Canadians. Do you know what your pension's worth in current dollar value?
I'm not really sure.
Okay, it's worth
but
several million dollars.
But I do have a good pension.
Yeah, you do.
I'm very
You do.
lucky.
It's worth several
to-
million
yeah.
dollars. If you were to cash that pension out, would you be happy to give up to the taxes on that at a higher rate? If that wasn't, it's an asset per se, right?
Right.
Your pension, which what we're doing, what this tax move is doing, is asking for assets that are being sold to be taxed at a higher rate,
Right.
right? So that's kind of what, if you want to equate your situation to what a small business person is who grows their business over time,
Right.
that's what we're asking, is for their pension to be taxed at a higher rate than when they made their investment decisions. And I want everybody in the room to be clear of that. That's what we're asking.
Right. And actually, I had a little conversation with Montana Wilson just before this. I am very lucky. I have a pension. I think everybody around this table, except for you, maybe, is not so lucky in not having a
And me.
pension. And my it's coming.
And me.
It's
So
coming. No.
I'm speaking from a position of neither being a business owner nor a pensioner.
Right.
All my assets are just things I've saved up over my life. My 6, 7, 8% I can save.
And I actually have my brother who works very, very hard, who does not have a pension, and he does not have any assets either. So
Okay.
that
so,
being said, I'll just finish answering the question.
Yeah.
I believe that every Canadian deserves a good pension. It's not about me pitting myself against anybody. It's about saying, why doesn't everybody in this country have a good pension
Yeah.
and are taken care of when
so
they
this is
when they
actually-
retire?
This is actually a good segue to take, because businesses can be more successful when they can allocate their capital in the most efficient way. And allocating capital in a regime of higher taxes means they're going to be automatically gravitating towards places where there's lower taxes, which means not here. It's in the United States, it's elsewhere in the world where capital can be taxed at a lower rate. And we already talked about that in my earlier questioning about venture capital. And again, I just moved a riding from a 20 some odd point Liberal win to a couple points win for me. And one of the issues I heard at the door was about capital taxes. And it had an influence on my election. And so I'm very passionate about what my constituents were saying about venture capital, building small businesses. And venture is not just building technology companies. It's construction trades. It's other sorts of manufacturing as well, which will be invested offshore. This also leads me to, I wanted to ask Ms. Wilson about our global competitiveness and how you are seeing the success of your business and the returns that you can make on your capital versus what you're seeing with your competitors in the United States.
So I can speak to the level of consolidation in our industry. We are seeing firms, non-Canadian firms, buying Canadian firms and taking that wealth outside of the country because of the tax rates.
Their investments are going outside the country. Okay.
That's correct.
And are you seeing that capital is being not driven back into the business and creating more jobs, but it's just being put on the shelf, or how are people allocating their capital?
I am not part of a larger firm, so don't feel overly comfortable answering that, other than to say that I don't believe that all
Okay.
of the money is staying where it could be in a local sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
That's it, Mr.
thank you,
Chair. Thank
MP
you.
Stewart. Thank you. Now to MP Chambers for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Jacques, Mr. Genet Gregoire, what happened to wealth inequality between the years of, say, 2019 and today?
I'm not sure. I didn't consult the data recently, but clearly wealth inequality has increased in the last 40 years. I don't exactly know about the last 4 years.
Okay. Someone mentioned about supercharging wealth inequality. The Bank of Canada governor says that inflation devastates low-income households and increases wealth inequality. Would you agree with him?
I don't think inflation increases wealth inequality. I would not agree with that.
Okay, so when asset prices go up, that doesn't increase wealth inequality?
But it depends if inflation reduces the value of assets. That's more the important question. It depends on that.
Okay, so you don't agree that money printing or increasing the value of assets leads to more wealth inequality?
Oh, yes, that I agree. You ask about inflation,
Okay.
which is different.
Okay. So over the last few years, which is what we've seen, huge asset price inflation driven by money printing and cheap debt, which has increased the value of assets, is actually responsible for producing wealth inequality. Like, maybe the government should be concerned about the things that had given rise to inflation. That might be one thing that government would like to consider taking into consideration about addressing. Ms. Yetman, I noticed when you listed the programs that you were very happy about the government introducing, you didn't mention pharmacare. I'm just curious if your members, or speaking on behalf of your members, if they support the single payer pharmacare program, or would they like to keep their plan?
No, I did mention pharmacare. You
Okay.
probably didn't hear
so
me.
Do you, on behalf of your members, you support?
I think pharmacare
leaving-
is really important.
Okay, just
I am not an
if I
expert
might-
in that, and I don't know.
If I may
Yes,
ask
go
the
right
question,
ahead.
you support getting rid of your members' current healthcare plans in favor of a single payer universal pharmacare model. Is that, I'm just trying to get an understanding of your position as an organization on pharmacare.
Well, personally, if you want me to talk personally, I can talk personally. My pharmacare is actually owned by me, believe it or not, because I belong to a union that's what they do. They take care of health care for me. So
do you like your
I
plan?
actually like the idea that the federal government would help us out with that.
Okay.
That would be a wonderful thing.
And if the plan was less quality than the one you have today, would you like to get rid of the plan you have today for another
Oh,
plan?
our plan's not that good.
I don't know. I beg to differ. There are a lot of people that don't have any plan that would love to have
And
it.
everybody should have a plan.
Ah, right. So we
There's
should fill
something
the
else.
gaps.
See, there we go.
We should fill the
We need
gaps.
to take care of each other.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.